Welcome back to The Competitors. My name is Bob Babbitt, and we're brought to you every Sunday night by Tri-Rock San Diego. Coming up on September 21st, Challenge Athletes Foundation and, of course, Competitor Radio. You can check out any of our interviews on iTunes. Honored to have our next guest. He is one of the legends of lifeguarding and actually founded the U.S. Life Saving Association, which is celebrating 50 years, Mr. Bob Burnside. Bob, how are you?
I'm fine, Bob. Thank you. I hope it's the same with you.
Thank you, sir. So Bob, talk a little bit about growing up. Did you grow up out here in California?
Well, actually, I was born in California, but my early youth was spent in Key West, Florida. In fact, when I was a youngster, I used to dive for coins that were thrown in from the ferries that came in from Cuba and from Key Largo. Oh. And I was really at that time, the only white kid in town. So I'm a real, what the Floridians call a conch. And in fact, interesting story. My grandmother used to sit at Sloppy Joe's with Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, wow.
I'd get a handful of coins and run to Sloppy Joe's. This is about a half a mile down from the wharf. Hand her my coins and go back and try to continue to finance the rest of her afternoon.
So were you always drawn to the ocean? Were you a water kid from early on?
Well, yes. My dad was an Olympic swimmer in 28 and 32 Olympics, actually from Hawaii, and swam with Duke Kahanamoku,
wow.
And a good friend of Duke's brother David, etc. So I've had that background always there.
So were you a swimmer yourself then? Did you swim competitively in high school and college?
Yes, I swam both in high school and college, and all through my career, and played water polo.
And was the Olympics a goal for you back then, since your dad had been an Olympian?
Well, they were, but to be very frank, when it came down that I was at the peak of my swimming career, I wasn't as good as I had hoped to be, and didn't make the swim team. But fortunately, I did make an international team that competed in the 1956 Olympics, where the Australians were putting on a international Olympic surf carnival with lifeguards from all over the world. And I made the American team on that one, and went to Australia, where the whole concept of our present United States Life Saving Association was envisioned as a young man.
So, back in when did you come to L.A.?
Well, I moved out to L.A. just before the war.
Okay.
And I stayed with my dad. At that time, frankly, on the beach in Malibu.
Oh, perfect.
I remember specifically December 7th, and he was fishing. I was on the beach swimming, and he called me over to listen to the radio, which was blasting out early in the morning, the early morning attack on Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
It's vivid in my mind still.
And so during that time, you were how old?
At that time, let's see. Oh, Christ. I would have been about 10, I believe.
Yeah. Now, did your dad have to go off to war, or was he able to stay home?
No, he had a lot of injuries over the years, and even though he was greatly disappointed in that, he was. I remember that, moaning about it. He ended up working as a warden throughout the entire Malibu area, and that was his contribution, plus his work, which he got into the war development, industrial type of thing.
So in 45, you're a locker attendant at L.A. Parks and Rec, and then 49, you become a pool lifeguard, 50, a city lifeguard, and then in 1951, you become an ocean lifeguard.
That's correct.
And what was it about being an ocean lifeguard back then that was appealing to you?
Well, at that time, being very frank, there was a lot of jobs around. We were going through a recession that was as bad as the one we've recently seen.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity presented to me by the chief lifeguard at the time. Would you be interested in taking a permanent position? And I said, well, yeah, gee, anything. It's a good salary. He said, well, it's not the greatest. We make $313 a month once you get to the top step, which will take you 3 years. But he said, one of the good things, if you want to go to Zuma Beach up in Malibu, he said the county just purchased a 3-mile stretch there, and they've got some homes that in the purchase they also acquired, and you can get free rent up there. And that sounded pretty good to me, and I jumped on it.
That sounds great now. I'd
Stayed
love that.
I stayed there really for 25 years, Bob.
25 years you're living for free.
25 years living for free.
Oh, love that.
Right on the beach.
And
my kids there.
And you became chief of LA County Lifeguards. You were there for 16 years. You were the chief of LA County Lifeguards. How has lifeguarding changed from back in the day when you're talking early 50s to now in 2014? How has lifeguarding changed, or has it?
Well, I think the early years of lifeguarding.
Yeah.
Lifeguarding started in China back in the 1700s, and in England in the late 1700s, in the United States, right at the turn of the century on the East Coast. And you ask, how has it changed? Well, my God, it's changed tremendously. Generally speaking, I think if I were going to phrase it as easily as I could,
yeah.
Lifeguarding used to be where a guy would be sitting maybe in a pole, like they sat on poles back east.
Right.
Because the crowds are so big. Or he might be in a tower. And it was a matter that when someone yelled for help, and he saw somebody drowning, they were in the water and made the rescue. That was a standard mode of operation for many, many, many years. Then it started to change, and during my tenure, let's say, as a young man growing on up, it started to change radically. It became then a matter of prevention. Not making the rescue was the key. If you make a rescue, you're not doing your job. What you need to do is get off your tail and get down and wave these people that potentially are getting into trouble, and get them on the beach. Explain to them, if you can, quickly what problem they were facing at the time, why you called them in. But everything became a matter of preventing, and that basically is the theme that is done today. Now, we see a lot of rescues. I mean, I'm sure your readers and listeners hear frequently about hundreds of people rescued on a weekend day.
Right.
And that's true up and down the coast and up and down the East Coast, too. But in reality, those are situations that occur because of extremely dangerous rip currents that pull people very quickly out. And no way they're going to get back in, and the lifeguard has to hit the water, bam. But the general concept today for really doing your job is to make the prevention, get them in, get them out of trouble, and if it gets too wild, which it has at certain times, particularly on the West Coast, where huge surf, strong rip currents are occurring, a beach will get shut down. The officer in charge will just say, okay, blow the whistle, sirens out, everybody out of the water, we're going to take a breather and regroup. So that's one of the biggest changes. And equipment, of course, has changed also over the years. Far more high-tech now. Communications are better. Beach vehicles, in every respect.
Did you think early on that you could make a living as a full-time lifeguard? Because I think a lot of people worked as lifeguards, during the summers and things like that. But full-time lifeguard, it was like, oh my God, that would be a dream job.
Well, when I first decided that I was going to take a permanent position, my dad said to me, "What are you going to do in the winter?"
Yeah, yeah.
And most people had the same concept, but as you know only too well, Bob, the west coast of the United States, particularly Southern California, it's a year-round thing.
It
and
is.
As surfing started to increase, and diving started to increase, and just the general population increase, activity on the beaches is a year-round situation. And it's just to the point now that sometimes it's almost unbelievable that these kids do the job they do. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people jam together in the water, and they end up with magnificent records.
They really do. So you invented the Burnside rescue can in 1967, and that's what we see when you're watching Baywatch and when you see the guys go down on the beach. What led to that?
Well, I was a lieutenant at Zuma Beach, and in 1 week I had two of my lifeguards come in with breaks in their teeth. And I would make out an industrial accident form and send them down to the local dentist. And I had on my desk a little pliable polyurethane type of cartoon diver
that
was on my desk. And anyway, I looked at that and I said, why can't we come up with something, take this metal can, and we'll make this out of a material that it will give a little bit instead of just busting people in the head. And I ended up meeting a professor at UCLA in industrial arts named Ron Ruzzi. And the two of us sat down over a beer one night and started talking about it, and he told me that there was a new method called rotational molding, and he was actually at that time engaged in putting together the same material in a motorcycle gasoline tank. And so Ron and I sat, and we started drawing, and had another beer, and started drawing a little bit more, and pretty soon he came up, and he said, hey, do you like this? And I said, absolutely. He said, let's try to see if we can put this off, and that's where the beginning of the thing started. Okay. He ended up, by the way, winning a very prestigious award in industrial arts in South Pasadena, as I recall, just for the overall design and product production of that unit.
So the idea was, when you swam up to somebody, you want to throw them that rather than them grabbing you.
Yes, that has been true ever since time with lifeguarding, generally speaking. The early cans were made out of copper with a very sharp cone at either end and a line on it with a 6 or 8 foot line with a shoulder strap. And you would swim out, so you didn't want to get in touch with the victim unless it was absolutely necessary. You'd push this to them and say, hang on, and then you'd tow them back.
Gotcha.
That concept is used today. I mean, that's the way you make a rescue. You don't want to get into the contact with somebody because if they're holding on, you can swim them back without a problem. There are times when you get into the drop zone that you've got to bring your victim in close, hang on to he or she and the can to just get through that dangerous area.
So over time, there's now, like 2.5 million lives have been saved in the past 50 years, and 1.5 million just in California. There's 10,000 members of the Life Saving Association in terms of current, retired, and junior. Is it surprising to you how big the association has become?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, we had recently our 50th anniversary of the United States Life Saving Association. And as I made a few comments to those in attendance, many of them were with me in the original founding board in 1964. And I told them, for those of us that have been reassigned, as we put it in lifeguard terms, that I thank them for keeping this thing going, for being able to put life-saving, as we envisioned it years and years ago, into the stage of the Internet now. I mean, it is high-tech, and the kids are trained, and we would be so proud, and I am, speaking for a lot of old guys that aren't here now, would be so proud and are proud of all of them today.
What the sport of triathlon has obviously grown around the world, and really the base for triathlon a lot of times was the lifeguard competitions in Australia. And so you guys, you mentioned earlier, you went back in '56 to Australia, which was, I think, it wasn't part of the Olympics, but it was around that at the same time as Olympics were going to be in Australia. And that was the first one, the first invitational lifeguard competition that you guys were involved with.
That's correct. Australia was very big in their volunteer lifeguard service. I mean, it was all over in every state and well organized. And the president at that time of the Australian movement was called a guy by the name of Adrian Kerr-Lewis. He recognized when the Olympics were given to
Melbourne,
Australia, all of the Australia went wild. Well, Australia had two sport things that they loved. One was their Australian rules football, and the other were their surf lifesavers. In Australia, to be a member of a surf lifesaving club was an honor in your community. Judge Kerr-Lewis recognized this. So he contacted the Australian Olympic Committee and said, I would like to propose, I will put on a surf championship, an international surf championship in Melbourne at Torquay Beach. And if you will sanction it, I'll make sure that people come from all over the world to participate in this. So they got an okay from the International Olympic Committee to allow that to take place. Kerr-Lewis then reached out and was able to pull in a team from Hawaii, which was a territory at the time, and a team from California, which were at that time representative of the Surf Life Saving Association of America. Pull them in, and the event went off beautifully.
I love that. And then internationally, you also, in '86, you went to Puerto Escondido. And there really weren't any lifeguards at all there. That break is pretty crazy.
Well,
Mexican pipeline.
Bob, you probably are familiar with Puerto Escondido.
Yeah.
Chica de la Playa is considered the Mexican pipeline.
Right.
And huge surf. And I had gone down there with a friend of mine, Ace Burns, which was a ex-Olympian himself, a USC water polo champion, great guy. He was having some health problems and didn't live too long after that, but wanted always to see it. And so I went down with him, and when we got there, we found out that they were having 3 to 4 dozen drownings a year, which is common, and the hotel owners were saying, "No, we hate these things. You know, there's bodies washing up on the beach, and that's not very nice for our guests."
Good, yeah.
And I met a young kid down there, and at that time proposed to him that we form a volunteer Mexican lifeguard corps with the surfers down there. And if he could get the kids together, agreed to forming a club, that I would make arrangements to get him up to California, and we would put him through training, which we did, at Huntington Beach. And since that time, we continued with that program until we finally got the governor of the state of Oaxaca to completely fund them, establish a lifeguard corps in the state, which they get the same pay now as a Mexican California or Mexican Highway Patrol officer does, and are under the state's chief fireman in his division. And they've done a great job. They've cut the fatality rate down, where they were having, as I said, sometimes 3 to 4. They were having 1, 2 at the most each year, and still have held that record in place. Done a great job.
And is that Club Tortuga?
That is our Club Tortuga, which I formed as strictly an arm of the United States Life Saving Association to reach out to areas like Mexico and Costa Rica and some of the other small areas that hadn't had any lifeguard service in place. Right now, Mexico is trying to get themselves together where they have a full-on national association called the Association of Mexican Salvavidas, which will take off on the same profile that we did in 1964.
So you've been competing for years in body surfing, and in the national lifeguard championships. In 2013, you competed in Manhattan Beach. That was just last year. Were you 82 years old?
Yep, 82. Christ, it's still flopping in the water.
Yeah. So in that, you did. Is that the Ironman competition where you rode the surfboat, paddle aboard, and swim?
Right. I went in that, Bob, and it's sort of my last hurrah, I guess you would say, because many years ago, one of the first Ironman lifeguard championships was held at that same venue at Manhattan Beach. So when it came up again, and Manhattan Beach took the invitation to host this year's Nationals, I decided, okay, I'm going to make this the last hurrah, and I'm going to get in shape again and go down and participate in it.
How'd you do?
Because I was in the 65 and older bracket, and there are not a hell of a lot of them, frankly, at that age, go in that Ironman thing.
Oh.
So did that and won that, and able to put that one on the wall and say adios.
And when you did 4 other events.
Well, yeah. The others are swimming and paddling and run and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's. And in terms of your working out now, what do you do nowadays?
Well, I'm right at this time. I'm what you would call a daily 2,000 meter a day guy.
Hey, that's great.
As far as my swimming time, which is basically in the spring, summer, and fall. But I'm an avid skier, and I live full time now. Almost, I have a place down in Palm Desert, but I live up in Eden, Utah, which is above Ogden, and I'm only about 5 minutes from my favorite ski mountain called Powder Mountain.
Oh yeah,
and I ski every day. At least 2 hours, sometimes a little bit more, then come home.
I love that.
Oh, I love it, yeah. You know, and the thing that's so great, Bob, is that the guys up there on patrol, of course, they're like They're like the lifeguards.
Yes,
you know,
they are.
I go in the
Absolutely.
morning to say, hi,
Yeah.
Chief, you know. Boy, go over to East 40 on Liberty Run. They had great powder over there. We just checked it out in the morning's patrol, you know. So it's like being right back on the beach with the kids on the beach.
That is cool. In body surfing, 13 national championships in a row?
Pardon me?
In body surfing, 13 national championships?
Well, when I lived down here,
yeah.
you know, I would always go down to the body surfing events. And,
yep.
and I was, you know, I've been around the ocean all my life, Bob, and I hit my division as I went on up from one division to another division to another division until I was had stacked up 13 straight years of winning my division. And one of those that I think you referred to earlier was they would take the winners from each division and put them into the grand finale.
Yep.
And I had a real good mermaid out there that day helping me, and ended up winning that, which is quite thrilling for me and a lot of the old timers.
So probably the toughest thing, I'm guessing, one of the toughest things that you guys deal with over the years with the lifeguards is budget cuts. It seems like when people are looking at budget cuts, they look
Exactly.
at the ocean they look at lifeguarding as frivolous, or they look at what's happening on the beach as, oh, that's a luxury item. That's not a necessity when it comes to libraries and roads, etc. How tough has that been, the battle?
Well, it has been very tough, Bob. Years ago, most lifeguard agencies were under Parks and Recreation departments.
Yeah.
And without in any way meaning to be spin it the wrong way, recreation people really didn't understand about beach lifeguarding. They were familiar with pool lifeguarding,
right.
And they thought it was just a kid that sat up in the pool and washed the decks down once in a while, made sure the kids didn't go over this line, and they didn't know it. So the salaries and retirement benefits were way down. You know, as time has gone on, one of the great chiefs on the West Coast, Bud Stevenson, with LA County, fought to get lifeguards' retirement benefits under the safety series, which basically is police and fire. Today, lifeguards have moved up where their salaries, their retirement benefits are comparable to the police and fire. You know, there's old thing, and I say to your officers out there and your
right.
firemen, this is not meant to be disrespectful, but we used to argue when I was in Sacramento debating this issue with committee people. I'd say, you know, gentlemen, in reality, you can take any lifeguard and you can train him to be a fireman or a policeman, but you cannot say the same thing with any policeman or any fireman. And the dangers are paralleled in every respect. It's just difference of whether it's hot or someone's shooting at you or whether you've got huge surf. And that was one of our strongest arguments, you know.
That's you know what? And that's a great argument, because the fitness level, the ability to do CPR and to read the ocean, all that helps in everything you do in terms of saving a life.
That's right. And you know, and Bob, you've been on the beach enough to realize, you know, that the kids that are working the beach, these are young kids, and they
right.
have to deal with a lot of different problems. I mean, everything from basic first aid to lost children to fights to narcotics, a multitude of things. They're enforcing ordinances all the time. And then at the same time, while doing that, they've got to keep an eye on what's going on in the ocean in front of them. And so that's why a lot of these things you see have changed over the years. As I mentioned earlier, prevention, key importance. You cannot allow things to get out of control. And yet you still have to take care of all the issues in the section of beach that you're responsible for.
One of the things I read about you, it talked about you were with Ronald Reagan once, and the two of you were both sort of scanning the ocean. And I could see that as a lifeguard, that you can't ever just sort of, oh, look at the sunset. You're always looking for danger.
You're
always looking
right.
for a
And
problem.
I don't think there's a lifeguard that's ever, retired from the active duty that ever can get to the beach and sit down and just relax.
Right.
He's always looking around. And Ronald Reagan told me in Malibu one time after a meeting, he said, Bob, he said, I cannot go to the beach and really enjoy it like everybody else. He said, I still have that lifeguard thing in me. He said, I'm looking out to see if somebody out there might be having a problem. So it's a fact.
So in June, you're going to be honored by the International Swimming Hall of Fame, the Paragon Award Lifetime Contribution Award for aquatic safety. That's lifetime achievement is always that's a great thing to receive, but it's almost what's great about it. It's not just you being honored; it's people recognizing the importance of the lifeguard.
Well, I am, and I tell you, Bob, extremely honored. And when you get to my point in life, you really don't ask for the kudos.
Right.
But when they come along and someone says, we've looked over a lot of stuff you've done, old guy, and good on you, as the Aussies say, it's very rewarding. And, yes, I am extremely honored.
So any competitions coming up this summer?
Yeah, trying to beat my Labrador to the buoy up in the mountains that we swim to every day, and she's beaten me every day. I cannot outswim her at the end.
Oh, is that right? So you and your Labrador go swim to a buoy every day?
I've got Labradors are the loves of my life beside my wife, and my little girls they go with me and swim around a buoy about 400 meters in the lake up in Utah. And on the way back, I can look at them. And when you're close to animals, Bob,
yep.
You can talk to them. They know exactly what you're saying. And I'll say to my lab, Nani, okay, about 50 meters to go, race you to the beach. I've never beaten her yet.
That is so great. I love that. That is so cool. Actually, one of our friends swims with his dog up in Dana Point, and one time the weather chopper was going over, and you could see them stopping, going, wait a second, is that guy swimming with his dog out there? Because they were pretty far out. That people are surprised when they see someone with their dog, and it's not just running and getting a stick out of the water, but actually swimming a couple hundred yards offshore.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
They're a wonderful joy to anyone's life, I'll tell you that, and they've given me a lot of pleasure in mine.
Hey, Bob, thank you so much for taking time to chat about your career. I love what you've done, and just the fact that people looked at life-saving and being a lifeguard as a part-time thing, and they probably didn't understand the importance of it. But when you start tossing numbers out there like 2.5 million lives changed and lives saved, and 1.5 million just in California, obviously. It's a noble profession.
When you think about if people understood, in the world that accidental drownings are only second to automobile accidents. Over 1 million people a year drown in the world. And the education is something that is so difficult to get out to everybody. I say to your readers
yes,
and your listeners, for God's sakes, please teach your children early. Get them familiar with it. Tell them of the hazards. Show them what to do. Make sure you have your eyes on them all the time. Make sure you're within reach of the little ones all the time. It's so important. So very important.
And it's interesting.
That tragedy occurs.
In the sport of triathlon, I tell people all the time, when you're out for a bike ride in the race and you get tired, you can slow down and stop. And if you're running, you can slow down and stop. When you're swimming, you don't really have that option, right? When things are starting to go bad for you. So it's
absolutely right.
Learning learn
the safety things.
Yeah.
All the way. I tell this to people that I ski with, Bob.
Yeah.
And I'll be on a ski lift going up, and there'll be some lady there or a guy without a helmet on. And I'll say, would you mind listening to an old guy for a second? Give you a little bit of good advice?
Yeah.
Go get a helmet. Don't ski without a helmet because injuries happen so much. We've lost so many people because they don't wear a helmet or not following basic safety things. So safety all the way around, education.
Well, and as we found in the deterrent for people doing a triathlon is the swim. Because
absolutely.
It scares people, and you've got cold water, current, kelp, big fish. There's a lot of things out there that you don't see. And
that's right.
So that
absolutely
education is huge.
Yeah, you can't do much. You can always fall off the bike and breathe.
Exactly.
And someone will come get you, or maybe pick you up when you sprain your ankle
yep.
to making a long turn on something. But you're out there in the water. You better make damn well sure that you are in good enough shape to finish that 2-mile stretch of swimming.
I love it. Hey, Bob, thank you, sir, for taking so much time and chatting about what's going on, and congrats on the award you're going to be getting this summer.
Thank you so much, Bob, and to your listeners, I wish you all a wonderful summer and a safe one.
I love the fact that you're 83 years old and you sound like you're 20.
I am. In my heart, I think I still am.
We are
haven't grown up.
we are brought to you by Tri-Rock San Diego. Coming up on September 21st, our sprint and Olympic distance races. Challenge Athletes Foundation, Competitor Radio. Check out all of our interviews. Our guest has been Bob Burnside, 83-year-old lifeguarding legend. Bob, thank you, sir.
You're more than welcome, Robert.
Welcome back to the Competitors. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you every Sunday night by Tri-Rock San Diego. Coming up on September 21st.